The Wild Tameless is about expanding our sphere of awareness into greater fields of consciousness. Our guests share their wisdom found from branching out into the unseen realms through alternative philosophy and mystical experiences. We focus on the soul component of the human experience and also touch on mind, body, and heart as we introduce pragmatic practices to create a meaningful and fulfilling life. We touch on modalities of health, ceremony, and ritual to help people harmonize their own energy and open up to the magic around them. The Wild Tameless is nature. It's the human spirit. It's music, art, and creation itself. This podcast is about helping people open to the great mystery so that we can collectively remember our place in the web of life and reorient our way forward for generations to come. Thanks for tuning in. I'm your host, Kyle Dow.
Has anyone told you about the way?
Sounds like those people who talk about Jesus a lot.
You should get involved.
Have you heard about the way?
Maybe show you the way.
You should definitely get involved with the way.
The right way or the wrong way? Do we want to do anything to sync up or drop in? Or?
What do you guys want to talk about? Because this could go anywhere.
I think we should get like a few touch points. So if we like lose ourselves, we can jump into them.
It's to inspire people to decide to want to take life in a spiritual way.
And if it's shit, we'll cut it.
No, we got this. One take, one roll.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Whose podcast are we on?
I think since you're in the middle, you can kind of guide it.
We're in my studio.
Okay, you can guide it.
Yeah, but you're doing Dieta.
So it's
I'm just pushing responsibility.
definitely not your podcast because you're on Dieta.
Yeah.
So we all have different podcasts. The Wild Tameless. What's yours called?
Mine is maybe I'll change the name, but it's Spiritual Wealth.
Spiritual Wealth.
Yeah.
And so the thing that actually connects us, we're all friends in the same community or social circle. And we have all found our way to a spiritual way of life. And that is kind of like a nebulous term on its own to be spiritual. So maybe we'll just start there. What is a spiritual life look like for each of you guys?
It's a big question. What does a spiritual life look like?
Yeah, what does it look like? And like basically, how do you live your life that allows you to label it as spiritual?
Well, I think that first and foremost is the curiosity about what spirituality even is. That's a dominant part of my just basic thinking pattern. Is just this extreme curiosity about spirituality. What is spirit? What is God? And I think that has formed the foundation of why I believe myself to be on a spiritual path. And it's a natural desire to want to do it. It's not like forced. It's very intuitive, the desire to want to learn about what it is. That's what I think for myself.
So it sounds like the curiosity and the seeking.
Yeah.
So that's part of like your orientation to a spiritual life. Like, what are we doing here? What is this?
Yeah.
And so what are some of the practices that like allow you to quantify or qualify your life as spiritual?
I never thought about it that I even have to qualify it because it just is spiritual. I don't need to qualify to become spiritual.
Yeah.
Life just is spiritual. I think
By default.
by default, life is spiritual. So once that is realized, then everyone is spiritual. Mm-hmm. So nobody's qualifying. They're just either aware of their spirituality or they're not, is what I think, is what I understand.
And so you became aware of it.
I became aware that life is spiritual at some point, I guess 7 years ago. Yep, 7 years ago, I became aware that life is spiritual and that I was on this, and that we're all on a spiritual path.
Okay.
Huh.
How do you live your life in a spiritual way? Or how would you even like define that?
I feel like there's external ethical considerations and then internal codes of discipline or value structuring that I have. And then there's practice. And then I have a personal spiritual practice, which is an internal thing, and then an external way of practicing, which is both external practice like a yoga asana and as well ceremony.
Mm.
That's like a pretty complete system depending on how it's constructed.
Okay, and so it sounds like the external practices is what shapes your internal world, landscape,
Sure.
energy body.
They're both connected, absolutely.
Right.
Can't disconnect one from the other, but they're different pointings in some sense. When I was speaking to internal process, that can be very specific, like certain energetic processes that I'm doing consciously with my breath and how I organize my internal energies. And of course, how I relate in the external world is also affecting those. And the pointing more towards external ceremony is very much about action, and it's other oriented rather than my internal process. Of course, part of my internal process that I'm externally acting, but there's a greater emphasis on what is in this realm.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think, I have my interpretation of what you're saying and like a level of understanding there. But there is a relationship between the inner world and the outer world.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these spiritual teachings would bring us to that contemplation or the awareness that there actually is no separation, that it's all one. And so with that, we can realize how the two influence each other. So what is happening in my external environment that creates a sensation or an experience internally, and what's shaping what, and really it is this kind of like symbiotic dance. And so we can actually, by bringing awareness to our inner landscape, we can like regulate an entire room. And I think that's what medicine people and shamans have the ability to do in these ceremonial spaces.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting to consider that. So we can kind of like outsource by going to ceremonies and like building this awareness and trying to let go of things and regulate things and balance things and shape our subtle energy body through that practice. Or we could do the same thing through mindfulness. And yeah, I think it's like such a intriguing space and contemplation and something to track like constantly.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people who don't have this awareness of mindfulness or even like the subtle energetic experience that is part of the human experience, they just go through at the whims of their energetic environments and their emotions and how that creates this turmoil. And then as soon as we like wake up, so to speak, it's like, oh, we start paying attention to what's going on in this dynamic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very well said. How would you express your spiritual system or approach?
So I think that's part of it. It's like a realization of connection. So it's this concept of all my relations. So everything that we come into contact with, we have a relationship with. And in that, we have a responsibility to pay attention to how we're influencing our environment.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it's like a matter of responsibility on like a physical level, all the aspects of our life, right? Mental, physical, emotional, and then even right into like financial, right? Vocational, taking responsibility for our life as it is, because that is a product of the connection that we're constantly within.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So ever expanding spheres of awareness within this field of consciousness and responsibility for what we're actually the cause and effect of our experience.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So even coming back to like you asked about practices, what do you find are the practices that you're honed in on right now?
Currently, I am singing a lot, so learning a lot of different medicine songs, specifically peyote songs. And I have an altar that I sit at, and I sing my morning song and say my morning prayers, which is usually one of gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end of the day, I'll sit at that same altar. I'm probably like around like 70 or 80% consistency, so it's not like perfect. So in the evening, there's like a bit of a recap. There's like gratitude and like clarifying intention. It's always coming back to like what is meaningful in my life and what I'm trying to direct energy into. what I'm trying to like create and manifest in life.
Mm.
So that's one of the practices, and maybe I'll let you guys share yours.
I'm very much the same place right now, singing. Yeah, song through and prayer through singing, and just it's become. It's just on one level, it's actually just the one most fun way I know how to pray. So it encourages me to want to do more of it because it's just so joyful to do it. And I believe so much of this path is about cultivating joy. Like that's why I do it. Really, I'm more able to every year to just remain joyful through life challenges and grateful for life challenges. And yeah, singing is this. I like singing too because when you go into like once so much of meditation stuff is trying to get out of the mind, and singing I like it now so much because you become the vibration of what you're singing and you become the sound itself. And so if you're singing beautiful things and you're tapped into just like energy and frequency, that's such an easy path to hone in onto. So
Absolutely.
like you, I started with the peyote songs.
Yeah.
And I love them so much. And more recently, I've started on like kirtan and singing that type of music because it's so vibrational. It like really derives from like Om and from the belly, and you like literally are vibrating through that. So an easy way to restructure your cells in a short period of time.
Yeah, and so song and music is a form of shaping the energy around us. It's like coming from inside and going into the outside. So that's like a very good example of what I was talking about.
Yeah.
Finding the harmony between the inner world and the outer world.
Yeah. And you can infuse the songs with your intentions. Right? And that's why it's so effective for prayer as well. Right? So you could sing a song without an intention and without the infusion, and it'll just be words. Which is still great. But when you really get deep into the prayer and the intention of that word, like you embody it. Especially now, because embodiment seems to be a very big word now these days. Everyone's trying to be embodied. That's an interesting topic I've been thinking a lot about, actually, because it's very popular to be embodied. And some traditions are like, some sages are like they're embodied, but like they don't identify as the body at all. Right? Non-identification with thought, with body, with even the material world at all, some people. But the trend right now in so much of like the Western world is like to be completely embodied. And you're like, I'm not sure if that always is the best. I don't know. But I don't know what your guys' thoughts are on that, on like how popular embodiment is as a word.
One way you can look at spiritual process is top down and bottoms up.
Yeah.
The top down I can express as like many types of Buddhism.
Yeah.
They give you all the teachings. It's all right there. You can read about it, you follow it along, but it's from like the mind and down to the body. Whereas other practices are like build the body first, cultivate the body, like Qigong, like yoga asana, and then work up. And you can simultaneously be doing top down work as well. So that's my way of doing it, is cultivation of the physical body. I feel like that is the best way to hone the vehicle that is doing the spiritual work. And yeah, my spiritual process has not been singing right now. I'm on a different train. I'm on a plant medicine Dieta. So I'm partaking in a specific spiritual process with a plant called Pinot Blanco. And I'm taking the plant every day. It's not psychotropic, but the plant is, you could think of it as sharing a consciousness with me. Kind of like how a pregnant woman's got a baby in there and making decisions with someone else in mind. And the plant is a plant, and it likes to be a plant. It doesn't like to move a lot. So I'm dropping a lot of my practices, my physical practices. It doesn't like to get cold, so I dropped off my cold water. It doesn't like to sing spiritual traditions that are not Ikaros. So I dropped off a lot of my other spiritual traditions. Wow. It's very much like you guys have said it, dating a plant.
How long have you been on Dieta now?
This is my second month, so not too long.
2 months out of how many?
The-
How much longer will you be going?
Oh, I'm most likely closing it this one.
Okay.
This is just a short one, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So spiritual process is really just allowing, sitting and breathing, meditating in some internal process, movement of energy. The plant is in some sense working on my energy fields. It's doing a lot of that work. And my part in that give and receive is holding the diet, no salts, no sugars, celibacy, not touching people, staying out of any kind of chaotic environment, and tending to myself, which is a huge practice to drop all practices.
Yeah.
Right? The non-practice is actually quite a challenging practice to do,
Because you've had so many practices.
so many practices.
And then you're like going down. Yeah. Wow.
And it's like a pressure cooker because so many of those practices are great for moving energy.
Yeah.
Build up stress in the day, tensions, emotion, have a good run, have a cold bath and a sauna. Great. Can't do that right now. So it like pressurizes all this emotion in there without a great capacity to really move it, which is like, yeah, it's a pressure cooker. It's great for spiritual process, but hell to be in sometimes.
Yeah.
Does it eventually move, or does it like?
It does eventually move. Like
Okay.
that's what happened last week. I went into like this immobilized state
Yeah.
where my body's like, you can't move it. Is the sense I got. And I called off my whole day of work, which I hardly ever do. And then I just lied there and started crying and purging, not physical vomit, but purging emotion and shaking.
Wow.
It's kind of like having a fever sometimes. The body goes hot and cold, and it's like a plant medicine ceremony.
Yeah.
The body's releasing, rebalancing.
Yeah.
And so that place that you access, that energetic, emotional purge, would you say it was like deeper in your system? And so this like regimen allowed you to get to that place and access it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not just the plant medicine, but being immobilized, like sitting still for like 7 hours allowed me to get at those deeper layers. Because if the mind is really busy, it's outside of itself. Focusing on screens is not absorbed in the deeper levels of our being, not even absorbed very deeply in the embodiment of physicality, let alone in the deeper levels that hold the deeper energetic condition.
Wow. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And would you say it was something like an experience or a trauma from this life, or was there even any identification from it, or just energy?
It's a lot all at once. So there was multiple processes releasing. A lot of it, like the process that I'm aware of, is transitioning into a more non-physical state. I'm becoming more and more aware in an everyday environment of I'm a being of energy and how the rules have changed since living in that way. Because the plant is taking me to another realm, right? I'm not touching people, so I'm aware of people's energy fields at a higher level. So it's raising my conscious awareness of energy. And because of that, it's a big transition to integrate all that information. And with that shift, a lot of old stories and belief systems that I've been operating in are void. But they still have a lot of attachment to old stories and emotions. And as that's coming up and clearing out, that's what a lot of this is. And then I get this sense I'm also being prepared for a relationship. And there's a lot of purification of my love. So old desire programs and things are coming up and also being brought to the surface to be released.
Wow. It sounds like a lot.
It's a lot.
And it just kind of, so as you speak to kind of entering like a new paradigm of awareness and even like experience, like I think so many people have resistance to that, like holding on to the way things are, right? The known, and people don't want to lose the known. And I think that's why a lot of people are so rooted in like physicality and reductionism and like materialistic perspectives and understandings of what's going on here. And so what do you think is like, how can we encourage people to kind of let go of that consensus reality?
How do we encourage that?
Like, yeah, like if we were going to put like common language that's actually a little bit nebulous, like people are walking around asleep, so to speak. And so what is the process of awakening? How do we encourage it, or do we even bother?
I think at the highest, lead by example.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the highest. Is ultimately you are like the thing you have to contribute to the world is whatever exact energy you're carrying right now. That's we can project out like in the future I'm going to do this and like I've done this, but like ultimately you are the energy you are in the moment. And so you lead by example by carrying good energy and being that inspires, that's joyful. That inspires people to be like, they want to have something, they want something you have. Typically, I've done a lot of coaching in my life, and ultimately any client that's ever hired me is because they wanted some quality I had. That's why they hire a coach. They want some attribute. So the other part is, I think you talked about like, I think if you're only in the mind and of the mental constructs and those attachments that keep you safe, if you continue on that way at this juncture in history, I believe, it's getting worse. It's getting harder to remain there. So I think there's like a natural waking up happening because it's so miserable to be only of the identification systems. And like, there's clearly something more deep and meaningful. And I think people are just naturally waking up to that. So it's not really we have to do something. But we are doing something when we do these podcasts because we like to ponder these things and we are doing these practices and in all of our own different ways. Yeah.
Word that really sticks out to me is authenticity. It's another big buzzword in the spiritual world, but I really like it.
I really like it too.
Because it, for me, represents acting from our true nature. And when an individual does that, they set an example. And when we do that at the highest, I say we live in harmony with Dharma, with universal order. And when we act from that in a more energetic way, we create an energetic field of that truth. The truth of who you are, and people can see that in the mirror, in the reflection of that.
Yeah, when I was in Nepal, that was Osho's one of his highest teachings too. Yeah. In very simple language, just be authentic. He just says, be authentic. So if you authentically are, and whatever your desires are, he's like, just do that then. Be authentic. And it will pass, and eventually the energy rises. But I really like that word too, authenticity. Yeah. What is it? How to be authentic?
Yeah, but to be blunt, some people are authentically assholes. And I think, like, I also understand like the perfection of the entire creation with all its variety of colors, and there's actually like morality is an illusion. There is no good and bad, and so it's kind of like live and let live. And I really appreciate the point of like getting to that place of resonance in truth, because it's kind of like an orchestra. So if the orchestra is out of tune, but then one person comes into tune, and then the next person becomes in tune, then that like ripples out, right? And so there's like kind of like a critical mass, and it continues to shift.
The only thing, like what you just said about like being an asshole and they're authentic, a lot of people try and be a joyful, shining light, but it's not. And they actually, it seems really nice, but deep down they know it's not authentic. And sometimes you do. There's periods of life you have to go through where maybe you have to be an asshole, and that's part of your lessons you have to learn, or some challenge like you have to go through, which maybe that's the authentic path for you. So, as another spiritual being, like we have to be non-judgmental about that and just let that soul go through the journey in its own way. I think is how I feel about it.
But I'm authentically judgmental.
Then that's your journey, right? So at least you're being authentic.
I went through a phase where I would just listen to spiritual stuff and stand-up comedy because they both had a similar vein of just like speaking authentically to the best of their abilities, and I appreciate it. I was like, he's saying what he's saying because it's like that's him, and you don't always get that everywhere. Yeah, so it's refreshing. I was like, there's something there. I haven't done it for a while, but
they're also comedians are also role playing to a certain extent. Like they're saying the edgy thing, a lot of them, that most people are willing to think but not express, right? So they're out there, they're looking for a reaction. There is that cause and effect relationship between the inner and the outer world, right? And they're allowing people to dance a little bit in their own shadow by speaking these like maybe deeper, uglier truths or judgments or however we want to frame it. It's important.
They're maestros up there playing with the energy.
Yeah, exactly.
The good comedians, they really know how to like work those energies. I haven't watched a lot of stand-up comedy, but I'm sure you just feel that in the field because they're aware of like when they're like on people's edge, and they're like, okay, let's take them off. Okay, let's reel them back and then hit them again.
It's quite the art.
It is. I have a lot of appreciation for comedy.
What would you say authenticity is if you had to define it, based on like what you feel about it?
I think it is surrendering to the thing that wants to come through us. So it's like getting to like a higher place of awareness and surrender. And I don't know, I've had like glimpses of that. Like a simple way of putting it might be like a flow state.
Yeah.
I've had glimpses of that. I wouldn't say I have any level of consistency there. The authenticity is like being real with whatever experience we're having in the moment. But that's also like a subtle dance because we could be radically authentic or we could be socially desirable. And sometimes being radically authentic is like being the asshole, right? Yeah. And so we're creating an attraction field. What do we actually want to draw to ourselves? So I could see how there would be a manipulation of authenticity depending on like setting and intention, right? So I think it's a nuanced dance, and it's.
Well, if you go and be authentically an asshole, it's true. It's what needed to come through, and then you'll get a response that you learn from, right? So if I go and do that for a little while, maybe I'm probably going to get some things come up for me that will really help me to change that, and it won't behave that way again.
There's a thought that I haven't fully formed, but I feel like there is something about an underlying intention of, say, someone on the path having like an orientation towards a good nature in some sense. I'm still fumbling to find the words here, but that guides the authenticity so it doesn't come out as being an asshole in the way that I think you may be speaking to it. I feel like there's like a way to be authentic and not just have poison come out of your mouth at another human because of some kind of other force, which I would say like our intention is what guides that energy. And there's a way to be authentic in that moment without just saying the rude thing that's on your mind. There's still like, it's not like I'm not being myself by not saying that, but there's another way to navigate that energy rather than like a lower level of just like, that came out, that was just me being authentic. Fuck you. Because that's like the mind of a child doing it, where there's like a more mature way of doing that, which would feel at least more authentic for most people, I would say.
Which kind of comes back to the awareness of the energy that we're embodying, right? And so if we've done enough work, we can recognize the inner landscape. And it's like, oh, if I'm triggered and then I say the truthful thing, but I'm not being responsible for my energy, then I'm just like blasting that person with my energy that isn't clean. But if I take the time to neutralize that and not be reactive, but be responsive, I can then maybe say the hard truth with really kind and good intentions. And so again, that's like takes a level of like energetic judo, I think, to like be in that place of where, this is actually my authentic opinion, but I recognize that there's going to be a cause and effect relationship with this. So what is the effect that I actually want to?
But you're even speaking it from a pretty high level of awareness. Like, not most people aren't considering, like, if I do this, what's going to be the cause and effect? What kind of karma am I creating through these actions? That's someone who's pretty aware.
So it's not entry level. It's not.
Yeah,
It's not white
it's
belt.
more. Yeah, it's more of an advanced. Your awareness to the level that you're like cause and effect. There's a return, the law of return.
It reminds me of a conversation we've had about desire and the pathway of following your desires.
Yes.
So in this way, there's
Which
an
is-
idea in some teachers, follow your desires. Yes, you'll probably orient towards the lower desires for sex, money, pleasure. But eventually something will wake up in you where you'll see that the higher desires of love and compassion and goodwill are actually more advantageous for you and everyone. And
Yes.
there's a natural movement. So you can express your authenticity of like saying the fuck you, but you do that enough and you'll realize it'll get you nowhere. And then you'll develop more of this higher sense over time through trial and error, and then it'll be more authentic.
And when we talk about over time might mean many lifetimes. It's not just like, so if somebody's watching this, like it also builds into the fact that I don't know. Well, even actually last time we spoke, you weren't sure about reincarnation. You said,
well, there's multiple levels and perspectives that I think are equally valid, for sure.
I want to hear more about that.
Sure.
Yeah.
So like from a linear time frame perspective,
Yeah.
there's a past and a future, and I would say in some level of how we articulate our story, how I articulate my story, I've incarnated here.
Yeah.
And I've chosen to have certain experiences. I've chosen on some higher level to have my parents. And because of this linear time frame perspective, I can have certain experiences, just like I can have certain beliefs, which will give me certain perceptions. And I'm choosing to do all this. But at another level, time is an illusion and there's non-linearity.
Yeah.
And from that perspective, past lives and the past isn't what we think of it as it is.
For sure.
So there's a lot more room to play, and that can just be word, but when you embody that belief, you can actually basically change the fabric of what reality is. And we do this a lot in energy healing, energy work, plant medicine work. We can work with our future self. We can heal non-locally at a distance. There's many things that can be worked with when you move beyond a linear time frame perspective. This is also speaking to the ancestors. They're still around. These are things that most people in spiritual circles hold. And it's like they operate from that perspective and level of truth for a period, but we can take more of that truth into our day-to-day. And it has all kinds of implications for karma and past lives and things that you can play around with. And this can give you access points for new codes to freedom and a lot more availability to play with your fundamental wiring of how you see and perceive the world and how most of the people see the world. Yeah.
That's not white belt stuff.
I'm on board with everything you just said.
So yeah, I think so it sounds like you do believe in multiple lives, and it's just so reincarnation, simply isn't linear like we usually speak about it. We always say past lives as though we're on like the cutting edge of like the chronological order of the inversions of existence, when it's really just like the oneness, everything happening at the same time.
It's back to the wording. The wording's always misleading. Hence the funny part about doing these podcasts and everything. But like when I was in Peru, like that was one of the most profound. It was something I already had experienced, but it really anchored it in. It just at those levels of consciousness, time is just not relevant. It doesn't. I wouldn't even say it doesn't exist. It's just irrelevant, and you have to drop to the level of your own humanity. Even saying the word drop is almost inaccurate because you're not dropping anywhere or going up anywhere. It's not relevant because it's just all an illumination, like an absolute perfect illumination. And like the experience that I have in my vocabulary of experiences that was profound was being able to experience specifically light and how light carries every dimension, infinite dimensions, all in one present moment. Like that's what light is coming for our galaxy. It's the sun, and it's able to carry it all. But when I got home from Peru, I realized that I had to in my own humanity. So I'm going to call it dropping to engage at a different level of engagement is basically the way I say it. At that level of engagement, it wasn't relevant to time because there's only presence. There's only one moment where all past lives and future lives have already happened. They're all happening right in one moment. But then I got home, I was like, now at the level of engagement as a human being, well, now what do I do?
Because you realize nothing matters.
Not that it doesn't matter, but like now I'm here and I ended up kind of going through a period of a little bit of purposelessness and not knowing what to do now.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was like the climax it was the most enlightened state and period of my life to date. So now what do I do?
Mm-hmm.
And the final teaching for that trip was to go live. It said, go now and live joyfully. That was the final teaching. Go live joy. Go play. It was basically, it whisked me away and said, go play. That's what you're doing here. Go have fun. Like go. You can go create whatever you want. Just go play.
Mm-hmm.
But now, and I'm noticing now as we have these discussions, it goes back to like, we past life. It implies back that I'm in the consciousness of time again for this purpose.
Really, it's just another life.
But it's already all happened.
Well, no, or happening.
It's already all happened and happening and gonna happen. That's already.
It's all happening now.
So in some certain way, you can actually just relax and just let it unfold.
Okay, well, let's. There's a couple things I want to touch on, but let's stay here. What about fate versus free will then? So if we're like we could change our energetic signature in this moment, which then influences other lives. But do we actually have like a destined path in this particular lifetime?
What are your definitions of fate and free will?
Well, are the decisions I make actually influencing the trajectory of my life, or am I destined to already make these choices and to have this experience? So like the choice is actually an illusion because it's already been made.
Both.
Yeah, I think both.
Go on.
So like, let's say, jumping back in from where I was before, of like at a higher level, the highest level, I've decided in some sense to incarnate here, and I've set up certain things. Mm-hmm. I would see that as like destiny nodes, and there's many ways that I can get there, and many choices I can make. So there's a certain amount of free will there, and it'll all get me to there. But even that I can change because everything is changeable. But from that higher level, I feel like I've committed to like having a partner in this life. I feel that deep in my bones. I can still say no. Might get it as well to say no for a while, but I think I've said yes. Mm-hmm. But that feels like destiny. And then it's like there's so many ways I can try to run away, and ultimately it'll come there. So I feel like absolutely I have free will, and it's like I'm on a certain timeline and there's certain destiny nodes, but I can shift those timelines. And I feel like maybe it was destiny you were there, but I feel like the story you're describing when you went down, it was like you closed off so many other pathways and timelines, and when you came back, you like integrated all that. And all those old desire programs and pathways were like just dissolving, kind of like how I was expressing. Many of these things are just dissolving as old stories. And then it's like, oh, what do you do now? You're free, you're liberated. You can choose your timeline. You can choose. You have a higher level of consciousness, a new responsibility to respond to all different kinds of things in life. And you're like, oh, well, now I'm going to do this. And you're finding your way.
Yeah, I mean, I could summarize the whole thing. That particular journey, it all came down to like one lesson that really mattered, and once you take, and then it changes your life.
Yeah. What about you? Both of you, free will, destiny, fate.
Well, I like
lovers.
I like what you're saying. Lovers, fated lovers. This is interesting. I think we run into. I like the idea of a soul pod. And so then
definitions.
Theoretically, you and I have, like the three of us have shared many lives together. And so we keep on having these agreements to come into each other's lives to teach each other certain lessons. And where I see that most, this like reservation of soulmates for romantic relationships, I think is whack. I think like we have many soulmates, and it could be in platonic relationships.
It's not about romance.
You know, exactly. And but with lovers, because of like the depth of that connection, there's such potential for alchemy and like the balancing of karma and the learning and the leveling up. And so I do believe that we definitely keep on, like, we meet the people that have the potential to unlock certain things inside us. And maybe it's those pivotal moments that actually alter the course of our experience, right? So, yeah, I don't think it's fixed, but I think the malleability of our experience comes from a higher level, which is kind of what I'm hearing from you. So, like, my ego can't be like, oh, I'm going to change my destiny. But if I get in connection with like my spirit or some higher level of organization, then I could actually maybe influence a bit more will on my human experience.
I like that.
More choice, as you
more power.
One other important piece I feel to add is like, I feel like we're born at a certain time and the stars and everything are aligned in a certain way, and that has an influence as expressed by zodiac and other systems, but it's still external energy. And though those energies affect us, just like the city we were born in affects us and the family, the more in control we are of our life force, meaning our prana, our chi, the more we connect with our higher consciousness and that higher mind we're alluding to, then we take more and more control of our destiny. And it's less about how the stars are and what zodiac we're in, and it's more about our conscious and deliberate choice as a creator.
Yeah.
What way do you think? Free will, destiny?
Again, I believe it's similar. It's just like if you keep it really simple, which it's not, but the more you're of the ego, you just have less. You're more of a determined being, and the more you elevate in your energy, like you said, and you become more conscious, you can have more power, like Kyle said, and like you can experientially, it feels like you have more free will, more ability to choose, less fear, and things are not as influential on you. Things that used to scare me in the past are not as important now. So it has less pull on me because it's nothing to be scared of. Does fear even exist, right? Like you can, but it is both. It's free will and both. Like because of what I feel now, that there's literally an unlimited amount of dimensions happening, like infinite dimensions happening simultaneously in one present moment, which means one plane is maybe determined, one has free will.
Right.
But I really don't know now. I actually don't. I'm at a stage where I don't care that I don't know anymore. It's not important. It's like, this is fun. Like, I like doing this stuff because it's fun. But what's important to me is, at this point now, is because I've spent years with these contemplations. And the truth is I don't know. And I don't need to know. And I am it. I am the thing that I'm looking for. And so I want to radiate joy in my practice in life. That's why I like dancing and singing and smiling and having sex. Right? These are the things that make me really joyful.
Yeah.
And that's what's the most important. So that's what I would probably say to anyone. Like it's cool to contemplate them both. They're probably both going on in an unlimited universe. But I don't know.
Yeah, I think I also don't know, and I like saying that all models are false, but some are useful.
Yeah.
So we create these conceptual models that help us orient to life.
Right.
And I think part of the personal growth, which is part of the spiritual practice, is recognizing when our models are outdated. We're like, yeah, I gotta let that go. Right. This is no longer serving.
And even through time, spiritual practices do change. Like things that were good, the correct practices 1,000 years ago are not useful anymore, and they don't work. So spirituality changes.
Well, we're all fumbling around here with our words to do is find truth. And if you want a direct experience of truth, you'll have a direct experience with life, which is not through language in the mind, it's through song and dance and sex. Or meditation. That's right.
But I like that's a really nice way to say it. It's just a direct. If you want a direct experience of truth, which I hear all the time, to me that's another word for an enlightened experience. To have an experience of enlightenment, a direct experience of truth. Have a direct experience of life.
And one other thing to touch on, I feel like in the spiritual journey, I've raised my awareness so that I have more choice, and yet my heart wants one thing. So of all the many things that I can choose, and I have so much more capacity and capability as I get older, my heart only wants one thing. It's usually just to meditate.
Is that one of the strongest desires you have? Is just to sit and meditate?
It is. That takes up the majority of my free time outside of commitments and dharmic service and all those things.
At this stage, what is the practice of meditation? You have to summarize it for someone.
Well, I follow a few different things, and I'm with the Kriya lineage, and I can't share the practice.
Yeah, okay.
But it's meditation proper. It's no music, no any external stimulus. Eyes are closed. There's some movement of energy, but it is a way to move beyond mind. Is really all I can express it. It's not a bodily experience that develops through the practice.
And when you're in the experience, once you're in a good state of that experience, how would you describe this?
Well, it's indescribable with the mind.
What's the best word you know how to describe it?
Well, I could, in some sense, grasp it, expressing it as variations of the absolute light, absolute emptiness, absolute vibration. It's like everything is unified without separation in some extreme. Everything is vibration, everything is this, and you're seeing it at its utmost, which is, in some sense, contrasting to what I'm experiencing now, which is fantastic, but it's all the limitation. Limitation doesn't necessarily mean negative, but I'm experiencing myself as a finite body, and I'm a very finite being with finite emotions and a finite mind, I think.
Totally. Yeah, beautiful.
So what level of that state of awareness or state of being are you able to embody or incorporate into your moment-to-moment life?
Me? Hardly any. Like, I'm still walking around. It's hard to say. Like, I feel I have more and more of an anchor into the ground of being, which is beyond this. Now, how much does that infiltrate into this and allow for what have you? Not really sure how to answer that. But there is that anchoring in the part of me, which is not a part, that is beyond what I know myself as mind and body. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you've gotten to this place of awareness and like being through a lot of years of devotion. So I want to speak a little bit about devotion, which we've been dancing around, but like, what does it mean to be devoted? And can you actually like quantify some of the duration of your practices, like how much time you spend daily or weekly on these things, so we can get a grasp for that? And to, at the risk of overloading you with questions, what is like the point of it all? Like where does it get you? Where are you trying to go? Why do you do it?
How much extra money do you make? That's what everyone wants to know.
What kind of car do you drive?
Okay, so 2 questions. Devotion, time of practice, and what do I get from it?
Yeah, but why do you do all of it?
Okay, how much time? Okay, we got it.
Brevity.
Well, I've been practicing for 10 years meditation. I've been practicing for over 7 years, almost 8 years, around 2 to 4 hours a day. And that's physical practice, asana, meditation, breath work. I've even included some martial arts and physical training in there over time, but mostly right now it's all meditative process and it's very specific in that way. What do I get out of it? I could write books on that because it's like it's with me in every circumstance. It's like learning how to love. It imbues everything in some way, big or small. What I feel called to share is life is change. It's just constantly changing. And it gives me a greater capacity to flow, to be with that, the adaptability of that. And every day I have meditation before my sleep. And it's like I build up all these tabs on my computer and then I close them down and I start fresh in the morning as best as I can. And that's really what it's helped me to do.
I think those are really important things, especially like the ability, just the simplicity of life is change.
Yeah.
Is really important at this time because change is seemingly, in my experience, speeding up. The feeling of change is faster in my own life, and it seems like for a lot of people, like my colleagues and friends and people, feel that way. So like adapting to change. I know it personally. I've had a lot of resistance in a lot of ways to change, and most people do, but some people are just more able to flow, like you said. Some people love that, and that's very useful at this period, I think, because there's a lot of change coming.
In some sense, I feel, as we're talking about, like, what's the value of spiritual practice? It's like, well, we're learning to grasp that we're eternal beings. So we need to have something that can help us contend with eternity. And eternity is change. So do we have a process which we can take with us? And for me, something we can do every day that helps us to tend to eternity, eternal nature. And honestly, I would say devotion has been a more recent part of that practice for me. I don't think I started out in a devotional way, as I feel like it's like the love that I once only expressed through one person is now how I relate to my spiritual process. And by way, it's helping me to, in some sense, expand my love to all people. Yeah. It's got a long way till I can open up my heart that much, but that's the experience of devotion. And I feel like discipline and devotion very much related for me. Yeah. And I was more disciplined in the beginning. I was like forcing myself to do things because that's how you discipline yourself.
Discipline and devotion, yeah, they have very similar qualities, but very different feels.
Yeah.
I used to use the word discipline. I think you actually are the one who said that to me a while back, like probably last year. And I also have totally adopted devotion. That feels beautiful.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is I've been talking with my partner about it a lot, and we have a very low devotional world. Everyone's like non-committal. And as I've stepped into like just that word and the experience of devotion, even in my partnership, my human partnership, it makes me want to be more devotional in all my things, both in business or with my relationship with God. Like devotion, it's a really beautiful word.
And so how do you practice devotion? I'm kind of getting threads of that in there. But is there
How do you practice it?
Yeah, what is your devotional practice?
Right now it's singing. It's devotional prayer through vibration, through me. Like I said, with like the kirtan that I've been just starting this journey, and I know it's going to be a big, long journey for me. But I feel devotional to that, to learning more about how to experience life as vibrational, how to move away from the construct of thought and to see things as vibration. So I'm devoted to like that path, developing that as my core way of seeing things, more importantly, feeling things. Like even now, I can feel like my vocals. I'm paying more attention to it. And my voice has been changing. Like my range is changing in my voice. for how high I can go with it, the range, and like where is it in my whole body? Like, it's up here, or like those sounds are up here. You are these vibrations, and that's what we recognize so much in like, right? Like Nicholas Tesla. If you want a more accurate way to see the world, think in terms of vibration, energy, or feel the world in energy. Well, he says think in terms of that. So I'm devoted to that.
Yeah, devotion is an interesting one that we do have a generally speaking a poor relationship with in Western society, and I've been contemplating what it means to be devotional for the past couple of years. And it's like, even in taking up a practice, if we want it to actually deepen and develop, then there has to be a level of commitment, which is devotion. And I like how you guys are bringing in this idea of like the energy with which we do it. So to do it like as it's always a chore isn't going to get us very far. But if we're showing up with love and with heart, it's like, oh yeah, I want to do this. Really, like,
I want to do it.
I want to do this. Like, I love to do it. I like the idea of like bringing the same amount of love to practice as we do to a lover. Like, I'm definitely going to work on that.
Yeah.
And because really it is like our gift to God or creator or spirit or whatever language we like to use. And so like, what do we actually want to be offering the source of all of this? One, we should be in like immense gratitude for this existence, for this experience, for this sacred, sensual human life. And I mean, yeah, that's it. How do we demonstrate that in our practice? And so, yeah, that's something I'll be incorporating into my daily practices. And it's also this recognition I've had, which comes with like, this is the challenge of devotion, is that it seems like things have to fall away. You know, like you were saying, letting go of old patterns and stories. We have to let that stuff, whatever's not serving us, die to what is of our like highest interest or our highest potential. And that's been really hard for me. It's like, oh, I have to say no to the beautiful experience for something that's more subjectively beautiful to me. And it's such like an individual orientation that it can feel lonesome and isolating. And yeah, that comes with a lot of grief for me personally.
Can you, one of you or both of you, speak to devotion as we've been expressing as a spiritual process and how that plays out in your relationship?
My relationship to what?
To your partners.
To like like women, or
that type of partnership, romantic partnership. Because I'm single, teach me your ways.
Honestly, well, my new beloved, one of the things that has attracted her to me is she said she's been waiting for someone. She's been waiting for someone for a partner who knows himself as God. And I guess that means me in some respects, right? To know ourselves as God is one that's important. Obviously, I'm not the God, like from an ego kind of point of view, but to recognize namaste, to know yourself and others as God, and to know life as spiritual and sacred. So like that all is stemming from devotion, really, that the sacred spiritual path is beautiful beyond all belief. It's like probably the main thing that purpose I'm here is just to talk about how beautiful creation is. It's so fantastic and spectacular. I'm devoted to it because it already happened. I'm here, and that's what we're here to do, is to really just like love this place, because look how incredibly elaborate it is, and like the intelligence that we are is just so beautiful. So I'm devoted to like developing the depth of that perspective, which is ultimately, for lack of better words, love, or God, or spirit. It's so amazing. So when I sing now, that's what I'm singing to. That's what these mantras are saying. Like, we are so grateful. we are so grateful to be aware of the supreme intelligence that you are and that we are.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so grateful for that, and letting that be the vibration of the mantra.
Mm-hmm.
It's devotion. And then that can carry into everything else. Am I devoted to this business opportunity? Am I devoted to this person?
Mm-hmm.
And creating that level of love, that sacred union. Like, ultimately, me and my new beloved, that's what we want, is to continue deepening into sacred union. But what does that mean? I think it's devoted. To me, devotion is right up there, mixed into that word, that package of wording.
Mm.
Sacred sexual union, sacred union in general.
That's really inspiring, because I've been single for 7-ish years, maybe 8 years now. Well, as long as I've been meditating, obviously, I had the time for that. And I was like, I don't want a relationship because I'm so fulfilled with my spiritual life. But I was saying that at a time when I was relating to relationships as two egos getting together and all that comes with that. And then as my soul started to speak, it's like, no, I do want soul companionship, but I want it to be a devotional relationship, which is no different than my spiritual process path. And I can pour all my love into a partnership and treat that as my practice.
And you also won't lose yourself within that, right? And the other part is, there's many women out there that are looking for a partner that can bring them there. Mm-hmm. So maybe she's not gonna meet you where you are, but you're actually gonna, like, she's gonna join you, and you're gonna pull her into that thing.
Would you prefer to have a woman that's ahead of you, on, like, perceptibly ahead of you on the path, or behind you on the path?
I don't have enough to really give a proper answer. I'd have to meditate on that and think it through. But what comes to my heart mind right now is about equal.
Also, I want to comment to that is that I am not the divine feminine right now in my embodiment, like, in the way that I feel. Like, I'm the sacred masculine is what I wish to embody more of. I'm devoted to understanding, developing what is that, the sacred masculine. And the polarity that my partner brings, only she can bring that. And so ahead of me or behind me on the path, it's like, I don't know if I think about it that way.
No, I see what you're saying. I mean, it's like we're again using a model that is inherently false, but they're typically in a relational dynamic. There is somebody that is the teacher, that somebody is archetypally the teacher, and the other one is the student. And ideally, they're different in a variety of domains, so that you can learn from each other and grow together. Mm. But I think based on our conditioning, we do seek out somebody who embodies certain qualities. And a lot of that comes back to, like, our relationship with our parents and whatnot, right? So sometimes it's, like, safer to be in the teacher position, right? To, like, feel like there's a level of control. In my experience, that's what I've felt. Yeah.
My teacher, one of my Qigong teachers, talks quite a bit about energetic levels, and I do think there is a basis to that. We have a certain vibrational level, and we can be quite off from individuals, and he expresses as, don't want to do that. If your level's really high and theirs isn't, you'll lower your vibration to meet them in all of your interactions, especially dual cultivation or sexual intimacy. And that can actually be quite a hamper on energetic evolution. So I don't really have personal say in that, but I feel like there is some credence there, and his writings on it are very clear and lucid. So I think that is something to consider, that there are legitimate levels. It's like, I know in the grand scheme of things there's no levels, but there's a difference between a white belt and a black belt. Can't fool that one.
Yeah, the black belt has spent more time in the dirt.
Exactly.
Yeah. What about this idea of, this is just coming to mind now, like, we have vacancies and maybe fullness in different energy systems based on, like, our own nature and nurture. And somebody was suggesting that to find somebody that is complementary, like the matching puzzle piece. So if we're using the 7 chakra system and I have a vacancy in my throat, then ideally I would have a partner who is able to like balance that out.
On like first hearing that, like my initial thing is no, aim for wholeness.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what the vacancy they're talking about. I mean, we have certain energetic dominances that could be expressed, and we could find balance in that. But I don't know about vacancy and like a chakra. I think if you're aligned in your spiritual process, you should have all of your chakras potentiated and running optimally. And if you're seeking somebody else to regulate your system, that's external, and that initially doesn't really sit well with me. But I don't know how that would actually play out.
I think you could speak to compatibility more. So like, it's not about like you're vacant and they're like they have something you don't have, but like I'm going to use the analogy of like a business, because it's like there's a sales guy and there's like a marketing guy.
Yeah.
He's whole as the sales guy, because that's what he's born to do, ideally.
Yeah.
And the marketing guy, or like a digital marketing guy, would be like, he's an analytics guy and he's whole as that, but he can't sell worth shit.
Mm-hmm.
So let's team these guys up and they can create something really beautiful together if they're aligned in what they're creating as a company.
Mm-hmm.
So like when I think about a partner, a sexual partner, or like a beloved, it's like they're both going for the same thing, but in simple terms, masculine and the feminine. She clearly has something I don't have, if we're aligned in that like desire to know God, that's going to be pretty good. It's going to be real good. But she's going to bring a lot to the table that I just don't.
So alignment becomes pretty important.
Yeah, alignment. In simple terms, you could start with like, if you want to keep it a little bit lower, like just values alignment. But at the highest level, I think is just your sacred partner for life. Like, are you both wanting to know God in a very specific lineage potentially? It's not going to work as good if you're Christian and I'm like a peyote bro.
Well, there is like some infiltration there, but
it could be. You get it, but like if we're both, we're gonna do better because we're peyote bros. So like,
I know some good Jesus songs.
You do.
I don't know if you're good favorite songs too.
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have the ones you sent me. I've learned some too.
I sent them to my parents as a Christian.
Oh yeah. Did they like it?
Probably won't play them again. I think they enjoyed it.
Imagine you go home and your dad has a water drum.
I'm peyote.
Okay, we're here now speaking about the alignment with romantic partners. What does it mean to be in love with a romantic partner? Like, what is like the phenomenological experience? Like, how does it influence your action? How do you like? What is it?
I got no stake in this fight. I'm not in a relationship. It's on to you two.
But you might have been in love at some point.
I'm just idealistic. You want a bunch of idealistic fantasies.
What is it to be in love? I don't know. It's everything, right? To be in love.
And kind of maybe a less nebulous question. What are the qualities that lead to a sustainable relationship?
What are the qualities that lead to a sustainable relationship? Well, one is the desire to want to work through things and like to grow. So I think it kind of goes back to like values a little bit, but like one of the values I have is someone who is interested in growth, so that you can grow together, and ideally as you grow, like you can keep on growing together. I'm still thinking about the first question you said though, the qualities of what it means to be in love.
Yeah, like experientially.
I mean, one of the things that's coming up right as I'm thinking about it is like, it makes me feel like I want to be a better man. Like a good woman makes me feel like I want to be a better man. Like I want to be better. I want to be the best man I can for this person. I want to grow.
Mm.
That's one of the feelings that's coming out.
Mm.
And happiness, just joy. When this person's around, I'm just joyful. Like with my current partner, I never get tired of her. I in all my relationships, I never get tired. I'm just
That's a
joyful.
good sign.
Yeah, that's a good sign. And it's like a good friend, right? If you have a really good friend,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like growing up, I think people spend less time with their good friends today because we're busier.
Mm-hmm.
But like growing up, you're like always with your best friend. And if they're not there, like where are they?
Yeah, and you're like able to do nothing with them and be content.
Yeah. So for you, I think one of the things is be making space for that person to come in, potentially.
I feel like something to share from my idealistic Isaac over here is like there's like the mind and the body, and you express like how does love be embodied or something along those lines. I feel like love is beyond that. Like I don't feel like love is just an emotion.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's not.
So it doesn't have any particular quality, and yet it can be expressed as really anything as it translates into the body mind.
Mm.
And as he's expressing it, it's like, well, it's a force of evolution. He's not falling in love; he's rising in love.
Mm.
It's
You
like,
just embody, like you said, love. Everything's deriving from love or God. So an expression of anger is an expression of love. In that way, right? If I get angry, it's because I want to protect my beloved. That's an expression of love in a lower vibration.
how would you answer?
Yeah, and so you're kind of bringing in some of the like higher philosophical, like metaphysics to a certain extent, and I think love is like if I were being courageous, I would say right now is the closest I've ever been to like being in love. And it feels really good, and I want to show up like in service to this incredible woman, and like like bring her gifts, like have experiences with her, like make her feel good, like laugh, like it's an extension. It's like something that I'm willing to put beyond my own personal needs. And also there's a uniqueness in the dynamic where I show up in a way that I don't show up anywhere else in life. Like it's uniquely our experience together as we are these like keys that fit in a very particular way and therefore open up certain sides of each other.
For sure.
And we're able to laugh and play, and that's like probably one of the things that I cherish most about this relationship. And there's also like this idea of compatibility. And so one model that I heard recently is there's intimacy, passion, and then compatibility. I feel like that third word I might be mixing up, but intimacy is like I could have intimacy with you guys, right? We could have like deep conversations, connections, maybe even touch in certain scenarios. And then after this podcast. And then there's like passion, which is like a level of like excitement and energy, and maybe that builds in like sexual desire, right? So that's another leg of this love triangle. And then, so the third word, I said compatibility, it's actually commitment. Like, are we able to commit to that person for longevity? Because there is going to be bumpy times. And we have to have the resilience, the desire to go through that discomfort, like moving from rupture to repair. As soon as one party is not willing to go beyond rupture to repair, then that's complete dissolution.
Well, right? That's the end of that, typically.
That's the end of that, right? So there's a level of devotion in it, and like like loving this person that we're so much that we're willing to sacrifice. We're willing to let other beautiful experiences fall to the wayside so that we can be devoted to that one that we love, to a point where they almost become like we get into that sacred union, and then we're just like, we're existing together.
I mean, by that point, you're not giving anything up. You're not giving anything up to choose the best thing for a lower lesser thing.
And that's probably something I would correct in my explanation of devotion earlier, where it's like it feels lonely, but if it feels lonely, then we're doing it wrong, because what we're actually doing in our devotional practice is like union with the divine.
Yeah, and with yourself.
Union with the divine.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that was really inspiring, and it inspired me in a way that I, as well, feel like I'm the deepest in love that I've ever been, and I'm not with a partner, and yet I get a sense from my partner, and as a devotional process for it's been over the last year, but more committed over the last 6 months. I've been in, okay, 6 months. But for the most part, I've been living my life with this kind of non-linear time that she's in some sense connected to me. She's already here, though I haven't met her, that I'm aware of. And when I'm doing something and I catch myself getting a little bit angry, I'm like, is that how you want to show up to your relationship? Is that what you want your kids to see? And there's this like higher mind, and it's like this love is helping me to evolve. And I'm showing up how I want to show up then, now. And because of that, I'm feeling a lot of that love. And they will hit me on days it's like that she's like near or something. It's like I feel all those same feelings that I've only ever experienced when I've had somebody physically, tangibly there. I was like, no, that's the force of love. I'm falling in love with love. And that's not something that needs to have the expression of a partner, but it'd be nice eventually. But it's fun to be single. So
I like that.
And in my mind, because I'm so there, it's like I went through a phase of being like, do I want it? Do I not? And then I realized this is just like my ego and material mind. And at a higher level, it's kind of like the destiny piece. I've already said yes. And then all of a sudden my mind shifted to, well, you're only going to be single for so long. And then for the rest of your life, you're not. So I'm like, okay, it's time to actually fully embrace what this is. Instead of focusing on something that I want that I don't have, just seeing the lack. Now I know that it's already coming. I give gratitude for it, and I'm living it. It's like, I know it's coming. So now I can just be single for a little bit. Maybe a lot. Whatever, it's fun. And when she comes, it'll be the best thing ever.
Yeah, I think it's also important to recognize that, like, the whole I'm single or I'm in a relationship, like, it goes back to that simplicity in all my relations. You're in a relationship with everything, period, and you're never single, and you're never alone. The whole I'm alone for the time. No, you're not. It's ridiculous. You're connected. You're in a relationship. You are connected, and you're not alone. So it's just an ego. To me, it's actually just an ego thing. I'm single or I'm in a partnership.
Okay, let me push you on this one a little bit, as this seems like actually a good point to tie things up.
Yeah.
There are people out there that feel very fucking alone right now. And I think our society, like, that's a product of our society as well. And so to that person that feels very alone, who doesn't have a devotional practice, like, what is one thing you would offer them to start with?
Like a practice?
A practice, yeah. Any words of wisdom? Like, what do they do to break out of that rut of, let's just call it, despair?
Well, based on the person that you're describing, I'd say take an interest in spirituality, just in general, because the basic archetype of I am alone and I really feel alone. I still believe that is a part the experience of the ego. If you're fully in ego consciousness, you're gonna feel like an individual. You're gonna feel separate, which is that's the experience of being alone. I'm separate and alone, and I'm an individual. I'm my own man. If that's all you know, then when things get tough, it's really hard. So I'd say my advice would be to take an interest in spirituality and see where it goes, see where your path takes you. I was on another podcast earlier today, and he asked me that similar question, and I didn't have a system for any, like, the audience, because I don't know what'll work for other people. Everyone's path's different. But making the decision to take life in a spiritual way and to explore spirituality and see where that path leads to. And you will, if you keep going, and find out that you're not alone. And you never were.
And so to put like another piece of language on that might be helpful for people, it's like the examination of the story. It's like, I'm alone. Well, who is I? Who is the I that is alone?
Sure.
Like, what is the evidence that you're perceiving to create that story?
Yeah, you could examine the I. You can go into subject-object relationships. You can examine the actual I. You can examine and contemplate alone. What does it mean? Right? Tell me something about being alone. Right? Like those are great dyads, actually. Like, dude, what does it even mean? Does it even exist?
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any same question?
What was the question?
The question was, if there's somebody out there right now that is feeling very alone and in a state of despair, what is like the one thing you would encourage them to do?
It's like a very general question, so it's hard to give specific advice. But what comes to mind is the point of focus. If they're focusing on what they don't have, that's going to expand. If they can focus on what they do want and find the many things that are available for them, because all the qualities in the universe exist at all times. If it's abundance, we're usually looking at our lack, and we're abundant. We're abundant in our lack. We can always flip that. We can begin to focus on it and let that expand. And I would encourage them to do that as an experiential process with direct experiences of reality. So if you can integrate dancing and fucking and doing things in there, it's a little playfulness. But yeah, focusing on the qualities that you would like to see expansion of. If you're feeling alone, focus on all the ways that you're feeling whole. And just continue to build that. It usually takes about 15 to 20 minutes of steady focus of the mind in one direction to build momentum behind it as a cue. That's why mantra and many things have a force behind them. So if you want to integrate a practice like that, but it's hard to get specific practices. But do a point of focus. Okay.
I really like that. I have so much lack. I am so abundant in how much I lack and don't have. I have so much. Is that how I do it?
Because not to make fun, but it is the ultimate slap in the face of the creator of all that is to think that we don't have power and do, because we're using our choice to choose to not have the power or to choose to focus on this, and that's because we have the choice. So it's like the ultimate paradox of paradigm.
Back to choice. We do have a choice. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, and you, Kyle?
I think what was coming up a little bit in both those is like false evidence appearing real, right? Which is the acronym for fear. So that's why it was like a
false evidence appearing real.
Yeah. So kind of that's why I got down to like, what is the story that that person is telling themselves? Because then we're just going to see evidence of that, right? Which kind of ties into your practice as well. So yeah, I would say find the one thing that, like that. First of all, we need interests in life to even be an interesting person, which then builds the foundation of our connection, like interpersonally. And so what is the thing that person has interest in? What is the thing that cultivates joy?
Yeah.
And we have to have an ability to shift our state to one that we could like frame as positive, right? So like whether that's singing or dancing or fucking, or something that's like really accessible to everybody, I would say is just get out into nature, because nature will provide that state shift like instantaneously. If you're saying 15 to 20 minutes to build momentum, go sit by a river like in a beautiful spot for 15 to 20 minutes and see how that changes your life. And it doesn't need to be a river, it could be a lake, it could be in the woods, like anywhere in nature where we're not surrounded by like cell phone towers and cars and concrete. And
Yeah.
that is our original state as part of nature. So let's return to that and see how that creates a shift in our experience.
So your advice would be return to nature. And summarize that.
Go sit your ass in nature. Yeah, it's easy.
Go sit in nature.
Yeah.
Well,
What you told me when we were doing work together, just sit you told me to put all my attention on my highest excitement.
Mm.
I was going through a difficult period.
Yeah, exactly. It's like,
Yeah.
because there's a mechanism there, the pathway of least resistance,
Mhm.
and being in our true core vibration. Because when we're following our highest excitement, we shift our vibration to being excited, and that's us raising our vibration. But as another piece, like whenever I'm in a dip and I spend a lot of time alone because I live alone and I meditate a lot, I almost always go to community, and that's my immediate shift. Sometimes it's hard for me to initiate my own process when I'm stuck in my things. So somebody else, if they do have an opportunity to have someone hold space for them, healer, an energy healer, or holder, space holder, or anything, that's invaluable. I would not do a quarter of the things that I've done over the last few years, not even an nth of them without the community that we have here in Swan. It's amazing. The amount of times I've gone out to the yoga shala or had an energy healing session or something that's just, yeah, so supportive.
We're pretty blessed. Any closing words before we wrap up?
Like you guys.
I'm glad we made that soul contract to incarnate together.
How do you know this isn't the first time we're going around here?
I know this isn't the first time.
Oh,
It's my first time.
that's
What?
my too.
That's why he's like a papa.
Papa Kyle. You got any closing remarks, Kyle?
Just thank you guys for this conversation. I think it was really rich, and hopefully it's supportive for some people out there. And if you guys are interested in paying attention to our journey, you could tune into each of our respective podcasts. And if you really dig this conversation, give us some feedback and we'll do more of them.
Mm-hmm.
We'll probably do more of them regardless, but yeah,
we'll do more of them.
yeah.
It's great.
Thanks for tuning in. Take care. Be well. Get your ass in nature. All right.
Nice.
What's that? Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to this episode. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment and perhaps sharing with others. And if you are curious about some of the services I offer, you can check out my website, connectionintegration.com. You'll see on there that I offer one-on-one support and guidance based around spiritual and mental wellness. I also offer nature connection experiences and plant medicine retreats throughout the year. Until next time, wishing you much curiosity, wonder, and peace as you open yourself up to the wild, tameless. Be well.